Hey you Stygian dogs, I'm late to the party on this one, so let's jump right into it. I finally picked this up in February as a birthday present to myself, and am I ever pleased that I did. Behold, the crowdfunded graphic novel adaptation of Robert E. Howard's 1929 classic, The Shadow Kingdom, as adapted by Randy Zimmerman and with art from Russ Leach. First published in the August 1929 issue of Weird Tales, The Shadow Kingdom is not only the first Kull of Atlantis story, it also happens to be considered the first sword and sorcery story. It is essential reading for Robert E. Howard fans. It's also a story that is definitely worth revisiting if you're a fan of the storylines that Jim Zub is playing with in the new Conan the Barbarian series from Titan Comics and Heroic Signatures. As the cover indicates, this is the special black and white illustrated collector's edition. The original crowdfunded volume was published in color with bonus art content, Howard's original prose, and a foreword written by YouTube culture firebrand Razorfist. This version lacks the bonus content in the foreword, and it's also missing the original prose story, contrary to what is advertised on the back cover. The text of the story is widely available, so I don't feel too put out by that. While I haven't had a good look at the color version, I'm more than pleased with this black and white edition in that it gives me a sense that I'm digging into an issue of the Savage Sword of Conan. Unlike the Savage Sword of Conan, it's printed on thin, bright white paper rather than newsprint. And there's no bothersome printing bleed through, so overall it's a decent magazine-style volume. As for its contents, I'll start by saying that this is a wonderfully faithful and lavish adaptation. Zimmerman and Leach closely follow Howard's novelette, structuring the comic into the original 4 chapters. A king comes riding, thus spake the silent halls of Volusia, they that walk the night, and masks. Much of Howard's original text is seamlessly woven into the panels, making it especially tempting to do a video read-through of his story alongside this adaptation, maybe even another video. I recently had fun reading Kings of the Night and Worms of the Earth to my son, so I took a similar approach with this story. Each night I read a chapter of Howard's tale aloud at bedtime, then after lights out, I read the same chapter in Zimmerman and Leach's adaptation. This plan held for the first 2 nights, but on the third I skipped the comic and decided to catch up by reading the final 2 chapters after finishing the story with my son on the 4th night. Their adaptation is so faithful that when I started the 3rd chapter in the comic, I was momentarily confused, thinking that I'd already read it the night before. It just aligned so closely with Howard's prose. I'd argue that the strict adherence to Howard's original text doesn't confine this comic adaptation at all. Instead, it provides strong guideposts for the retelling, with any constraints acting as a framework within which Russ Leach's art is free to soar. And soar it does. During the Fund My Comic campaign, I saw Russ Leach's work, and I liked it well enough, but being unfamiliar with his art, I was a bit hesitant. Was I just seeing the best highlights? Would I enjoy it over the long haul? I always worry about whether I'll connect with an artist's style through the long haul. But holy cow, I keep coming back to these pages again and again. They're just so much fun. It feels like Leach has taken the images I imagined while reading the story and just amplified them, breathing new life into Howard's tale. He doesn't just illustrate, he elevates. As previously mentioned, this was crowdfunded through fundmycomic.com and published by Arrow Comics. The creative team are actually in the midst of crowdfunding their 3rd Kull comic. The current campaign is for the Atlantean #2, the spring 2025 issue. The Atlantean started in autumn 2024, and a summer 2025 issue #3 is in pre-production, ready for a July launch. These are the continuing stories of Kull and Brule in their hunt to find the heart of the Serpent Kingdom and to kill their ability to sway the events of the human world. Each issue has 50 plus pages of lovingly crafted black and white comic book art and editorial, with special guest writers, a superb painted cover, and condensed episodic storytelling. This means readers can enjoy a single issue as a self-contained tale, or pick up all the books in the series and follow Kull's hunt for the Serpent Menace. You'll absolutely want to check out the fundmycomic.com campaign to check out more details on the offering. You'll find all of these full-page examples that I'm sharing here. Plus, you'll get pricing details, and for $25 US plus shipping, you can get an issue #1 and #2 bundle. And if you want the ultimate catch-up package, which includes the color version of the Shadow Kingdom, the Atlantean #1 and #2, that's $55 US plus shipping. Randy Zimmerman and Russ Leach's retelling of Robert E. Howard's The Shadow Kingdom, the story that started the sword and sorcery genre, is clearly the product of passion. It's respectful and celebratory, and I think it's a must-have for fans of Robert E. Howard in comic book form. It comes heartily recommended. Again, this version of the Shadow Kingdom is absolutely worth your time and money, so check it out. Also check out the link in the video description to explore the latest crowdfunding campaign for The Atlantean. I can't wait to get my hand on those. Now, this isn't the first comic adaptation of the Shadow Kingdom. Roy Thomas tackled the story in issues number 1 and number 2 of Kull the Conqueror from 1971. So let's spend a few minutes to check out what Thomas did with his version and to note some of the major differences versus Howard's original story, occasionally using Zimmerman and Leach's version as reference. Thomas's Kull the Conqueror number 1, illustrated by Ross Andru and Wally Wood, shares the title A King Comes Riding with chapter 1 of Robert E. Howard's The Shadow Kingdom and tells the same story as that chapter and then some. As Kull enters Volusia, not all are celebrating their king, and whispers of naysayers are heard. Thomas uses this moment to introduce political intrigue via Redondo, a minstrel who sings critically of Kull, indeed who is plotting against the king. This sets up some storytelling for future issues and gives Thomas a chance to demonstrate Kull's magnanimity. Similar to the original tale, upon arriving at the palace, Kull holds an audience with a Pictish emissary who extends an invitation from Canu, the Pictish ambassador, to attend a dinner alone. The difference in Thomas's story is that Brule, as the Pictish emissary, is named outright, whereas Brule's named identity is not established until chapter 3 of Howard's story, even though it is the spear slayer that Kull has unknowingly met previously. Another difference with Thomas's story is that the exchange between Kull and the emissary is more heated than it is in the original prose story. After this moment in the original story, a pensive Kull considers the invitation and reminisces briefly about deposing the tyrant king to claim the crown, and then the chapter ends. Roy Thomas, on the other hand, takes the opportunity over 12 pages to recount the events of Kull's life up to this present moment, and he does so in quite a bit of detail. Political intrigue appearing again, and then the issue ends. To summarize, Thomas addresses the key moments from Howard's chapter 1 while adding political intrigue for the sake of future issues, revealing Brule's identity earlier than the prose story does, and giving the reader a big introduction to Kull's life up until this moment. This leaves issue number 2 of Kull the Conqueror with art by Marie and John Severin and titled The Shadow Kingdom for Roy Thomas to address the 3 remaining chapters of Howard's story. And expediting things is the name of the game here. Thomas just wastes no time. In the original story, Kull's meeting with the ambassador Canu is marked by mystery and warnings that things are afoot, and that he will send to Kull a man named Brule the Spear Slayer who will be known by the bracelet he bears. All of chapter 2 is given to this, but here Thomas has Canu readily tell Kull of the creatures of the past, Serpent Men and the priests of the Serpent Cult, something that isn't revealed until chapter 3 in Howard's story, and this is by Brule rather than Canu. I'll refer here to those great panels from Russ Leach that I mentioned earlier. Roy Thomas has Canu's dinner plus the reveal last all of 3 pages until Kull and Brule are sent off to the palace. The events that unfold over the next few pages, the mystery of the shape-shifting serpent men, the conspiracy against the king, and the ghostly appearance of King Iolal, and the grim knowledge that death at the hands of a snake man result in eternal enslavement as a ghost, closely follow chapter 3 of Howard's story. The pact between Kull and Brule to kill each other rather than face such a fate remains intact. While Thomas makes minor changes, he stays true to the spirit of the original story. The most notable difference is that Brule is revealed earlier in his version, without his protective bracelet. The rest of Thomas's issue aligns well with the climax of chapter 4 in Howard's original story, and it's incredibly satisfying. The key difference is in Kull's state at the end. Howard's version sees him utterly exhausted, passing out as Brule reassures those present that none of his wounds are mortal and he'll recover with rest. In Thomas's adaptation, Kull remains resilient, personally assuring his people that, while wounded, he is not mortally so, before walking off to rest on his own terms. Condensing the events of the final 3 prose chapters into this single issue works well in the comic format and makes for a thrilling read. And I mean, come on, Roy Thomas's Kull is fun stuff. The Shadow Kingdom is an absolute classic of the genre. It's a must-read. The original prose story is widely available, so please do check it out. There's no excuse not to. And given what we've seen, Jim Zub do with Kull, Brule, and Conan in the current licensed ongoing series, along with the hints we saw in issue number 19. Check out my video for more on that. The story is likely of some relevance in the months to come. I'd also recommend checking out Kings of the Night and Worms of the Earth, as I think it's just a matter of time before Bran McMorn appears in the Heroic Signatures tales. Thanks for watching, liking, consider subscribing, and until next time, take it easy, you Stygian dogs.